All right, let's talk about episode 2. Um, I like that this episode is told in a non-linear way so that it just kind of feels, confusing and almost like, obviously they're still in the no end house. And I think that within the no end house, that time is kind of always off and no one really knows where they're at. And no one ever really knows what they're doing and what's going on inside. It's kind of like a dreamlike state. Everything that's happened in this episode since they've been in, it makes it very much feels like they're in a dream world. And, that is pretty much similar to the first season. I mean, the tone is definitely retained here, where everything just feels off, just off-kiltered a little bit. And it gives that feeling of unease throughout. I like that every character has their own individual thing that's happening to them. You got Margot with her dad, and why is he back, and what the hell's going on here? He's aware that he's dead, but and then. You got JD with his doppelganger who's like a better sense of himself, and, he ends up killing him at the end, I guess. And then you've got Jules, who has this like ball that lights up, or an egg with, a human inside of it, or at least a human-like creature. And then you got Seth, who's kind of just wandering the streets, and he sees like these caged people at the end of the cul-de-sac. So they're setting up a lot of questions. You're sitting there kind of just like, what the fuck is going on? Which is what this episode should be doing, and pretty much the rest of the season should be doing. And I'm not sure we're ever going to get all these answers. One thing that this episode is doing is it's making the characters very self-conscious, like very self-aware that, of all the possibilities, like all the obvious possibilities, like, well, maybe we're still in this house, and, maybe this is what's going on. They keep kind of saying everything you're immediately thinking, because, I get so used to obvious plot twists that, you're just sitting there like, okay, they're probably, and then they say it, which kind of almost, gets rid of that possibility. So it kind of has weeded out all of these obvious plot twists. And I really like that. I mean, obviously, I guess they could then do it, but it just seems like they're like, in a really clever way being like, I know this is what you're thinking, but this isn't it. I mean, we just mentioned it, so that's not what it's going to be. I really, the whole idea that this is taking place in like perfect suburbia with all the perfect little houses and all the comforts of home, it's just like this comfortable nightmare. Like it's this scenic, ideal place to be. This is where you want to live. This is the American dream, but it's, the dream's a nightmare. So I like that kind of feel to it with it being set there. The character that I think I'm most interested in at the moment right now is just this drifter, this guy who, he clearly, I mean, this is from my perspective of what I think is possibly going on here, is that, this is a guy who went into the no end house somewhere else. I can't remember what his license plate was, but he went in there with his wife, and he got out, and she didn't. And so then when he got out, the house is gone, and he tried to go back in. Obviously, it wasn't there, so he tracked it down and went back in to find his wife. And when he's talking to her and she doesn't recognize him, clearly, as I said earlier, like, time isn't really a construct in there anymore. Like when she's watching out the windows and the bikers kind of keep going on a loop and no one really seems to know where they are or when they are. Like he could have been out of there for, a few weeks, and she could have been in there for seemingly years for all she knew, or not. I don't know. I don't know how that's all going to play out, or if it's ever going to be answered. The only things that actually, the wife in the beginning, I actually had to, the wife that he sees upstairs, and he's like, honey, that I realized that that's the chick who's being chased in the beginning of the first episode. So who she's being chased by and why and whatnot, that's going to be interesting to find out. Now, the things that I was not exactly crazy about, but I'm willing to look past all this stuff, is, for one, if the drifter did go back and find the house, why didn't he warn everyone who was outside the house not to go in? Clearly he knows it's a bad thing to go in. So why wasn't he like, get the fuck out of here, you shouldn't be here? Like, literally not allowing them to go in the house. And then the reactions from everybody. Like, everyone just kind of accepts everything so easily. Like, if I saw the shit that, JD or Margot or any of these characters were seeing, I'd be freaking the fuck out, and so would anybody else. You don't see a doppelganger. You don't see a carbon copy of yourself and not freak out. You don't see your dad back from the dead. You don't see people caged on a street corner and not try to help them out. It's almost like they're in a daze. So like, almost like a dream, So I don't know. That did feel off to me. I don't know if that will be explained. Now, my guesses at what could possibly be going on is, either the house is trying to like take over their lives outside. They're keeping them in there, and then there's like, they get to leave the house, and as long as they keep them in there, they kind of get to be out. I mean, that's possible. I don't know. And then it does seem like they're creating people, though. I mean, you have the egg with like the person inside of it. You've got, these people who are able to think up other people. You've got castings, that first room in the house when all their faces have been like casted, basically. Like, that just all kind of points to they're making copies of them. Now, why? I don't know. And I don't know if that's even going to be brought up or if I'm even right about that, but that's what I see from it. I did like when the dad, brings the mom to life, I guess, from her memory of her earring or something, and then he goes down and he like breaks her open, and she seems to have like big pomegranates inside of her, and he starts eating it. That shit was so fucking weird and awesome. What's been kind of odd too is like this whole cussing thing. Like, I know that they're kind of just silencing them in the moment when they say fuck, so that they can add them in later on DVD, which I think is a really clever way of being able to do the show you want and say the words that you want to say, and then it's like, all right, we'll just mute them here and then we'll put them back on a DVD. But I feel like 2 or 3 times in this episode that a person just outright says fuck. It's weird. Like, I can't, I'm like, did I just hear that right? Did they say it? Like, it was odd to me. So it was like, are there some, and then some are like, are they allowed to have only a couple? And I don't know. I couldn't figure that out. But heavily looking forward to the next episode. So yeah, let me know what you thought.